Good morning. So when Karishma approached me to do this talk on corruption and also talk about my journey as a journalist and an artist and also a teacher now, I said I have not done political reporting as such, but I've been part of the city, realizing that the newspapers bulk of the readers are from the city, and unless we understand the city proper, its workings, how the systems work, and the people behind it, and see the corruption there, we just become part of the audience in the political games played in the name of corruption at a much higher level. So basically, I am looking at the media, my memories, and meddling corruption. We have been looking at the city issues from most of the newspapers. That's what they've been doing. They've been looking at only one street here, one drain there, without understanding the macro level picture. So through multiple columns over the last 15 years in the Deccan Herald, I've been trying to understand, analyze, speak to stakeholders, right? So connecting the dots from the micro to the macro. And the media's role has been to amplify the voices of different movements which is broken out in the city. Many of you would be remembering the steel flyover Beda movement, and of course they are fixated with flyover. Anything that flies over, they are very interested. When the media fails to connect these dots and inform the audience, that's when you're giving the systemic corruption a way to get away from the spotlight. By not doing certain things, there is corruption there. I have just stuck mainly to mobility projects here. Of course, there is corruption in everything what the city stands for. But the mobility perspective, everybody talks about the metro, right? Now the metro is big money, huge, thousands and thousands of crores. We also have the suburban rail, which is, it doesn't cost much to acquire land, and it is moving at such a slow rate that I called it the sub-Harappan railway, right? And the metro also, I was just mentioning today that metro is also slow, so slow that, it's called not Namma metro, it's a Namma Mommakkala metro, So every year delayed is that every addition to the cost keeps escalating. So a metro which is envisaged for 5,000 crores costs 25,000 crore now. Where's the money going? How many people are benefited from it per kilometer? There's corruption in that. Now, they made a mockery of mobility itself. So of course, we have been talking about footpaths and cycling tracks and public transport, but they don't seem to be very serious about it. When you look at the budget and all, the kind of allocation they make, sustainability is not their priority at all, right? And for obvious reasons. Now, the metro is the preferred option, and it is prohibitively expensive for what's the population. And that is one main reason they prefer the metro over the suburban rail or public transport. Public transport, for a population of about, an estimated population about 1.5 crore Bangaloreans, we have just about 6,300 buses. When you ask them, they tell us that we have buses, but we don't have the drivers. And why don't you have the drivers? We don't have the money. So they'll give enough money, enough and more money, of course using the double engine government or whatever it is, for the metro. But they can't spare money for the public transport, In the process, we can have vast, volumes of population who can afford the metro, Yesterday they inaugurated the one stretch from the KR Puram to Whitefield, right? Now that stretch about 13 kilometers cost about 35 rupees. Now how many of those people working in the service industry, the servants, drivers, maids, domestic maids and all that, how can they afford to go from KR Puram to that place with 35 bucks? This is a question. Now they might prefer the bus. Is a bus 5 rupees, 10 rupees at the most? Now these are the issues which are not even considered. We also have pedestrians, skywalks, and the skywalk is placed in places where we don't, it's not where we need. It's where the visibility of the ads on the skywalks is good, right? So we have something like the signal-free corridor on Old Airport Road now. I think many of you have seen that, experienced that. Now I stay close to that place where Suranjandas Road comes and meets the old airport. There's a T-junction, and to make the T-junction underpass, they cut about a dozen 100-year-old trees there. Okay, it's all been documented, and there was no tree act, there was no tree census, any kind of on-the-spot checking, any public consultation, nothing. Now what happens is the vehicles come at extremely high speed from Marthalli side and go and get collected at the next junction, wind tunnel. So what happened is, we used to have waiting times of about 2 minutes. Now it has gone to 10 minutes. There's a huge chaos at the wind tunnel junction. Okay. Now signal-free corridor, which means the priority is the motorist. Okay. It echoes the policy that has always been motorist friendly. Now the skywalks are supposed to be quite high because the ads have to be visible from a long distance, right? So which means they have to climb and climb and climb. And when you ask, what about the senior citizens? What about the people who are going to Manipal Hospital, for instance? No, we have the lift. So many people have done the status of the lifts in the skywalks in Bangalore. 80% of them don't work. Okay. Now this is the honeymoon period for this signal-free corridor. We'll wait for a few months and see how many of those lifts work. So we see a lot of dangerous jaywalking, and I know the person who proposed this signal-free corridor. He's a consultant. Okay, I don't want to take his name, and there are many consultants in our city, consulting based on conflict of interest and their own interest. Okay, a lot of people are involved in this. The bureaucracy, the governing classes, the corporators, the MLAs. Everybody are involved. One such skywalk was planned right in front of one of Bangalore's iconic parks, the Kappan Park, right? Now, this was a monster in the making. Now, if you see from a aerial drone view, it might look very, I don't know what it looks like, but from a ground level, it will look like a monster, blanking out all the greenery, all the visual aesthetics, pollution, everything. So when I went for a walk there, I saw some structures coming up on either side of the road. I inquired and I figured out this is a skywalk which is coming. It was completely out of the blue. Nobody knew it. So I called up my editor and said, see, this is a story. So they said, let's put it on front page. Okay. So this story, the next day was the lead story of Deccan Herald. So I followed it up with 2 other stories, related stories, all on front page. This kind of a triggered kind of a public movement. Somebody put a change.org petition, and it activated a lot of movements, and then it became a big issue. And then BBMP was supposed to, stop it. Now, in the process, I'm sure that this would have helped a lot of commercial establishments in that area, and also many of the contractors, and many ads would have come up there, I'm sure. Now, the corruption is embedded with the lack of planning. Planning is given a short thrift. So, if you look at the MG Road metro station, okay, now we think only 5 years ahead. We don't even think of 10 years, forget 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. In the West or developed economies, they look at vision which is 50 years old, 100 years old. Now what happens is, this is the green, the purple line, right, Bayapnalli to Kengeri. Now the other line which is coming from the Gotigere to Nagavara, okay, this line is supposed to intersect at MG Road. Now, what has happened is, now since this was put overground, right, it has destroyed the boulevard by going overground. Now it's they could have gone underground from Alsur itself and joined Kappan Park, right, underground. Now they didn't think through that, so they went overground and in the process destroyed that iconic boulevard. And they came up with there was a bunch of architects, I couldn't get those pictures, who came up with very fancy, good looking stations. They chucked all of them and came out with their boring, very industrial scale, factory kind of ugly monsters they call the MG Road metro station, right. So in the process, you have this metro station which is about 3-4 floors above the ground. Now the other line which is coming from Gotigari is underground. What happens is, it comes underground, which is about 2 floors down. Now for a person to go from one line to another, they have to cross 5 levels. Now if it had been underground, if the MG Road line had been underground, it would have been like Majestic. You just have to climb just one level, right. So this is the huge gap in planning, thinking ahead. So it comes along with the corruption. And all of you, that's what I said, Namma Metro turns Namma Mommakala Metro because of these delays. And alignments are not planned in advance. It's usually, for instance, if you see the signal-free corridor, okay, on Old Airport Road, the CM recently announced that we are planning a line from, I think it's Gotigari to Marathali. Now, under the new phase, they were supposed to, there was a particular line, I remember, okay, in the planning stages, in the early planning stages, to have a Gotigari to Marathali line, which could have been connected to the current Whitefield line, right. Now, what has happened is, there was a particular minister, I don't want to name him, but he came up with a project called pod taxis on this side of the, very fancy thing. It suits a place like Nandi Hills, but not a mass transit option. So they're going to have pillars on the footpath where the pod taxis will take people, like 2-3 people in one pod, and many pods will go up and down. You can think of, visualize like 50 years ahead how transport will be like. So I have a suspicion that it's because he wanted to push this particular Gotigari Marathali line was shelved. Now the Marathali is now, if you look at the old airport, it's completely very congested on either side. Now the plan is to go underground. I don't know how it's going to work, how many years it will take, how many Mommakala metro it might be, I don't know. Okay. Now the same case with Hebbal flyover, right. So I have turned this Hebbal layover. A lot of people going to airport gets laid over there, right. They are adding ramp after ramp, and you know what's going to happen, right. Every time, there's no realistic planning. They're not planning how to have a uniform carriageway before and after a junction. So 8 lane will become a 3 lane or a 4 lane, and the usual, it's common sense that it's going to lead to congestion, okay. I've been seeing these kind of writing about it, and I've seen the transition over the last 28 years plus 1 year, almost 6 months. I'm an independent journalist. I worked for the Times of India as a pure print journalist, and then I moved on 2.5 years. I was a crime reporter. I've covered all the Urdu riots, for instance, Urdu riots, and many. It's just any reporter who was trying to make sense of journalism starts off with a crime reporting, if you really want to. So I remember going with the commissioners, sitting with Sangliana in the car, and in Chamrajpet, people were. There was somebody threatened that they're going to put a bomb from a 5-floor building. So Sangliana, he was a very brave man. He just went inside and all that. Okay, then I moved to Hindu after 2.5 years, and then it started in a small way. We used to have this email. Having an email ID was kind of a status symbol, And then, but before that, in Times itself, there was a zamana of pages. This is a pager. The chief reporter told me, keep it very safe and all that. So one of the reporters kept it safe. He didn't bring it to the office. You asked me to, So then we moved on to skeletal web, right? The skeletal web was the concept of basic websites, the hindu.com, or it was all free. There was no concept. They didn't even think of making money through online, right? So, and then of course it slowly, started becoming fully digital. And by that time, many years had passed. So they also started competing. Many online stories, even online websites, not even started. But these, the speed with which we used to, report and file stories increased. We were started, by the time I had moved to Deccan Herald, and Deccan Herald was getting very aggressive on online, and they set up a video team. Now if you see, if any of you have come to the Deccan Herald office, one entire, there were rows of reporters' workstations. They were completely shifted, and the reporters are on the periphery. The entire thing has been taken over by the video team. So they invested hugely on video equipment, and they are the new kings, right? And they make a lot of videos, high quality videos, because they've hired a lot of very good video producers, content developers and all that. And then of course, I was doing podcasting, because there's two youngsters who were doing podcasting, and then one fine day, both of them quit. And then I was a bit active on Clubhouse, the audio only Clubhouse. So they thought that I know podcasting. So I had to start from scratch, but it was a good experience. I have done around 200 episodes so far. So they started realizing the worth of podcasting through multiple channels, telling a story, and different ways of telling stories. It was not just about a lead or inverted pyramid like people are used to, because we all realize that not many people look at newspapers these days. Even my own son doesn't touch a newspaper. That's how it is. I have not seen a teenager even having a look at even the sports page. I ask them, how do you consume news? They say in shorts. So in shorts is kind of an insult to a journalist who spends an entire day chasing a story. Finally, it's reduced to how many words? 50 words? And this is the output of our one day's work, and that's enough for them. They don't need to go in depth into that. During the pandemic, a lot of people stopped buying newspapers. Entire apartment associations said COVID is spreading through newspapers. While the reality is that the entire thing is automated. You don't touch it, right? But despite giving clarifications and all that, even today, most of the apartments have not restarted the newspaper subscription, and so they all moved on to, some of them who can afford that, who are obsessed with it, have moved on to online e-paper subscription. It's still an evolving medium. Okay, now of course everybody are talking about the Chat GPT. Now, how Chat GPT is going to kill reporting? Will it kill reporting? Will it kill journalism? I don't know, because the status of Chat GPT, the current version is, can't analyze. It is generative. So a breaking news, giving a context, a perspective, I don't think Chat GPT in the current version can do it. But I don't know, 6 months later it might be different. So that's the fear. Okay, in the old school journalism, research meant going through, bundles of old newspaper cuttings, or they still keep, but it's just, you can access it online. But then we had to physically go through that. If any particular story is there, you need to hunt down, or of course them old colleagues who have been crime reporters or in the younger age and who have moved on to political reporting. Some people think that once they mature, they have to do only political reporting. I don't agree. Of course, I given you the rationale for it. Now, then came Google. Of course, the rest is history. There's another reason why I put this image there. Online, you have content editors. Offline, they remain discontent. Okay, there's a reason for it. Now, especially after the pandemic, the print has lost huge commercial pillars to stand on, So print did make some money in the past when newspapers were part of the morning coffee. Now I told you, nobody reads. This is a journalist. I don't know whether he looks like him, not an Indian journalist, of course. We spoke about the corruption at the governance level. There's a corruption at the media level, although it's a very subtle, may not be out in the open. So there's a concept of gifted journalist, right? So a gifted journalist is a big meaning. So usually the salaries have been very low. There was some Malayalam Manorama survey, like in the marriage market, the least preferred is the journalist, So people say that, okay, the bride's father asks, okay, you're a journalist, so what do you do for money? What do you do for a living? And of course, in many media houses, there's a lack of growth, lack of diversity in newsrooms, okay? I don't need to elaborate on that. There is a lack of, I'm telling you with 29 years of experience that there is a lack of diversity, and some might try to boost it by some cosmetic changes, but that doesn't go deep. Now, advertisers, of course, have become more powerful. In the Times of India, the response section is much more powerful than the editorial department, and the salaries are way, way higher in the response section. Okay. Now with this job losses and layoffs and all that, journalists are extremely insecure. And when you are insecure, you tend to be gifted journalist. Okay. And of course, the ecosystem manipulates them, and many have given up and are continuing to get out of the mainstream. Okay. Mainstream journalism, which try to make some compromises with businesses and the old school journalism, and that's the unfortunate fact. So I dwell a little bit on the creative part of me. So my first cartoon show was in response to the Pokhran nuclear blast, right? So what happened was the entire country was abuzz. They were celebrating. A lot of Japanese were saying, "What are you celebrating? We are suffering disabilities for the last 4 generations, and what are you celebrating?" So we formed a collective called Cartoonist Unanimous, and then we had a series of annual shows. Okay, the first show was called Peace. Okay, so we made a lot of satirical cartoons on the entire nuclear bombast. So this was in 2011. I looked at the previous 10 years as something called nostalgia. Okay, so that was like, I've seen you somewhere. Was it on Facebook? Okay, this was Jaswant Singh, who wrote a book on Jinnah, and then he got kicked out, right? And this was, of course, Nokia. Android is bullish, Nokia is finished. Okay, in 2011, I also realized that access is an afterthought everywhere, right? People with disabilities who can't walk, our roads are not accessible, our public spaces are not accessible. Even today, if you look at, I had taken my mother to an eye surgeon. The eye hospital had stairs, there was no ramp. It's not even considered essential. So I thought of this using cartoons. How do you make cartoons accessible to the blind? So I had a special kind of pen where gel comes out, it sticks out like a 3-dimensional thing. So those lines you can touch and feel. So they can come, and I also had a tie-up with the National Association of the Blind. So they gave me the captions in Braille. So I had this captions. So you can see those people from there. They are from the NAB and other blind schools. And then they're coming in, feeling it. And I asked them, did they understand? Many of them understood what was there. They could somehow figure it out. So it was an experiment in 2011. And in the process, in the last maybe 10 years, 15 years, I've been trying to make satirical remarks about, different things. And during the pandemic, it was, sitting at home basically. Okay. So I was doing a lot of memes and putting it on Instagram. So COVID is a lesson in distance education, right? Dear distant relative, keep that distance. Safest place in India, indoor. Yeah. So this was about just a bit of wordplay, and then we're trying to experiment with different medium. When a new strain came after an entire year of stress, you had a new strain. It was also a time when realized that a lot of people want to help, but they were afraid to come out. Okay, and even I was stuck indoors. So I had a lot of Facebook friends, their friends, and all that. So I thought I'll draw cartoons of them, caricatures of them, and then I put a small payment of $500, but there was no upper limit. So they had to help people in their surroundings, especially underprivileged migrant laborers and all that, who are affected by this entire the pandemic. So I did some 85 to 90 caricatures like that, and a lot of people donated. They had to just take a pledge saying that okay, I did this, and post it on Facebook. There was a huge response. We had this is the bunch of the first 50 collections. So I raised about 2.5 lakhs, more than that. But then the concept, I wanted to take it further. I have some more plans to take it further in different forms in the future. Okay, right now I'm an independent journalist. I'm doing writing for multiple news websites, newspapers, the Hindu, Deccan Herald. Plus also I've co-founded this Art Bengaluru Collective, a platform to curate shows. It's cartoons, paintings, charcoal, and multiple forms, and the journey continues. These are this is my design stories, and so these are one kind of the big picture story. This is a Varthur Lake. So you look at, so I collaborate with a lot of scientists, research institutions, get their stories, because what happens is many of these research papers, the real story is hidden somewhere. So I take it out and then try to build a collage so that it's more easily accessible. Now also there was an inside story on elevated metro has ruined city's beauty, shrunk its roads, what we had discussed earlier. And then I've also done some busking. I went to the streets on Church Street, Jayanagar and all that, and wrote about experiential stories and all that. So this is keeping, and I also teach now in Christ University. So this is what is me. Now we can start thank you.